Welcome to the Melinda Eitzen Show. I'm Melinda. Today we have with us Mitch Little. He's a fabulous attorney and he's running for political office. Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you. It's been a long time. I haven't gotten to see you. I've been busy on the campaign trail and trying cases, and haven't gotten to spend enough time with you, so I'm glad to be invited here.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Well, congratulations. You won your primary.
Yes, thank you so much. It was quite a pitched battle.
Yes, I think you beat an incumbent. Is that true?
I beat an incumbent who spent $2 million putting my face on television. You probably saw some of them.
Wow.
Yeah, you probably saw some of those ads, I'm thinking.
Yes. I was like, oh, Mitch is on TV.
Not in a good way. Yeah.
Well, it's a big deal to beat an incumbent. They have a huge advantage.
It was it didn't really sink in until after the primary was over, but yeah, there was a tremendous financial advantage. There are a lot of built-in advantages to being an incumbent.
Yes,
you know?
Yes.
And man, I had a lot of people helping me. So
obviously.
That was why we won, because I had so many good people helping.
Well, and it's not even enough. Like, none of us have enough friends and family that alone that can bring you. So something is happening. You got your word out somehow.
Yeah, it was. Gosh, I had a lot of grassroots support from the people who were local to my district, who were volunteering, talking to their friends, calling people, emailing, texting. That was huge. I had a lot of support financially from people within the district who were very generous. It takes everything. So there's not any one thing you can really attribute victory to, because there are so many people helping you and investing in the process.
Yes.
So man, I'm just so grateful.
Okay, so what are you running for?
I'm running for state representative for House District 65, which is all in Denton County, and it's a strip that runs from basically Carrollton all the way to like Argyle, Roanoke, Justin area.
It's a big area.
Yeah, it's a strip that runs east-west. It takes about an hour to drive into my district. Yeah.
So you have to live there in order to run
yes,
from there.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
So you live there. What made you want to run for office? You're a very successful lawyer. I'll say that because I know personally.
Yeah, you and I have known each other for a long time, since I was a baby lawyer. And you're obviously a very prominent family law attorney. So it was very important for me to get to know you when I was a young lawyer. There were a couple of things that drew me to it. One, obviously I was part of the impeachment trial for the impeachment of Ken Paxton. And I got to see really how Austin works. I didn't much like it. I didn't like how things work down there. And I thought the incumbent, who I was friends with, had a relationship with, I was her campaign treasurer at one point. I just didn't like the way she was voting, and didn't feel like I could get through to her. And so I said, why not me? And I stepped forward and decided to run. And it was a good decision, hard decision for our family. You know, I've got 3 kids, 13, and 9. And, you know, when somebody in a family runs for office, the whole family runs for office. You know, it takes a toll. It really does. I mean, you probably saw that with your dad. I mean,
yes, my dad was an elected official.
Your dad was an elected official, a district judge, and you lived through it. How old were you the first time he ran for office?
Oh, that's a good question. So he was on the bench 22 years, and we were still like teenagers probably. I was probably 12 when he ran the first time. So about the age of
the age my kids were. Yes. Did you tolerate it pretty well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think back then, so this was quite a while ago, I think they protected the candidates better, meaning they didn't let people run. It's not like it is now.
And say horrible things about him all day.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was running for judge, which is a political position, but the race sometimes is really apolitical.
Yes. He did run against an incumbent the first time, but after that, he was never run against.
Yeah.
So he only had one big campaign where somebody was fighting against him.
Yeah.
Because he was so well regarded.
And there was a good reason for that. When I was a young lawyer, I practiced in front of him. He was the consummate gentleman. He really was. And a very good judge, too.
Thank you. So it wasn't so bad. And, you know, he was already a busy trial lawyer. So frankly, what's the difference from a 13-year-old's perspective?
I think that's how my kids felt.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, he's working at the office, or he's working at this club meeting tonight.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I went away to college. She had worked before
Right.
she had children, and then she got me to college, and then she worked at our high school while my siblings were still in high school. And then she worked until she was 80, and she was a layoff during COVID.
Awesome. I forget, where did you go to high school?
Like Highlands.
Oh, awesome. Very good.
Okay, so back to you.
Yeah.
One thing that people may not realize, I mean, the average person in Texas is not hyper aware of what is going on at the state legislature. But I'm a little bit aware because it affects my practice. Every 2 years, the legislature meets, and there are always bills about family law that are before the House. And guess what?
Yes.
None of those people are family lawyers.
Yeah, they have a lot of hot opinions about how things should go. Changes to the family code, which would probably have significant impacts on your practice
Yes.
and on your clients. And so how do those things get shepherded through? Well, generally, by the time a bill gets to the legislature, you're going to make a significant change to the family code. You would think that they would have discussed this in detail with the family bar. And sometimes the family bar is advancing bills to the legislature for passage, but sometimes there are other people who are not so interested in talking to the family bar. They want things passed too. And
Yes.
So I think lawyers are people who are in the, I'll call it, divorce industry, need to be aware of what the threats are and what's coming forward to the legislature that might really impact it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lobby that happens.
Yeah.
So the Texas Family Law Section hires a lobbyist,
Sure.
believe it or not.
Do you know who it is?
Oh, gosh, I don't remember his name.
They've probably got more than one. It's probably not just one.
Yes. And then he and she, they organize lawyers like myself to go, and I haven't done it, but other lawyers who are experienced to go talk to the legislature
Yes.
to tell them why the
To
bills.
testify in committee hearings.
Yes.
You should do that. You have a lot of cachet. So if you show up, I'd be like, oh, Melinda Eitzen's here. We need to listen. Everybody shut it down.
And anyone can submit a bill, right?
Yes.
So someone who had a bad result for them in court, they could submit a bill that really isn't good generally for the population. They're just mad about their case. And so that's
Yes.
why we have to go tell the legislators, hey, I hear what he's saying or she's saying in their instance, but
Yes.
broad application would not make sense.
Yeah, and something that might affect your practice and really anybody in, I'll call it a trial or litigation practices. There are a lot of people who are pushing judicial accountability reforms, changes or reforms to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, potentially audio and video requirements in every courtroom.
Oh, my word.
So, yeah, I mean, talk about some of the things you've seen in family law are probably pretty dramatic in the courtroom from time to time. Maybe some things people don't want on video or audio.
Right.
So there will always be some changes that are going to potentially impact your practice.
And some of them are good. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that the law usually lags a little bit behind what society is doing.
That's true.
And so I think some of it is progress and good. It's just that how do we make it clear, to people who have no experience in this area, legislators, what's really going on.
Yeah.
Well, what upset you that made you say, I've got to go improve things there?
Yeah. So obviously, your audience, you've got people who are Democrats and Republicans.
Yes.
I'm the Republican nominee. So what was bothering me within my party, or at least with the incumbent I was running against, was the incumbent was espousing one thing on the campaign trail and voting a different way.
Oh, that is
And
bad.
what I mean is, when you are starting out as a candidate and you are mobilizing the grassroots and you are trying to get people to support you and volunteer and donate, et cetera, you tell them things and then you go to Austin and you're co-opted by a system that's already in place that's designed to replicate itself. And I just thought that was gross. I got to see it with the impeachment trial and I thought, man, can't we do better than this?
Yes.
That was what was really bothering me more than anything, or animating the decision to pull me and my family into it.
Yes. Well, you beat her at the first level.
Yes.
Now we're going to have a general election in November. And do you have an opponent?
Yeah, I do have an opponent, and he's run for city council in the Colony before. He's a very progressive candidate, kind of the polar opposite of where I come from politically. Larger government, more tax, etc. An expansive view of what government should be in people's lives, and I take the opposite view.
Yeah.
So it's pretty stark comparison.
Without speaking about politics too much,
Yeah.
I just generally don't want the government telling me to do any more than they're already telling me to do.
Yeah. I think people are starting to feel that way. I think, obviously we're in an election year, presidential election year. So everything in your life will be politicized every day between now and then, between now and November. I think people don't particularly like that. The intensity of political discussion in our country is getting ratcheted up all the time. And not only that, there's an election every 5 minutes. So we have a primary. At a primary in March, there was a local municipal election, a week ago. And then at the day after Memorial Day, there will be a primary runoff, and then you'll have a general election in November. People are just like, enough already.
Yes.
Like, this is so much, and they get fatigued from listening to it, hearing about it, etc. And so generally, I think people just go, hey, I want to cast my vote. I want to have somebody who espouses my ideals, and then they go do what they say they're going to do. I don't think that should be too much to ask. And then they forget about it.
What are the hot issues in the House right now?
Yeah. The huge one that the governor has been banging the war drum on is school choice. So the idea that you're able to take your property tax money and apply it to the school of your choice, whether it's through a homeschool program, private parochial schools, or potentially going to a different public school of your choice. So there are a variety of feelings, views, opinions, emotions around that issue because the people in public education are very concerned about being underfunded. I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of the school districts, you take Frisco ISD, for example, they're $30 million underwater on their budget for next year.
Wow.
Louisville ISD, somewhere between $16 and $18 million underwater on their budget for next year. And this is a statewide endemic problem. Part of it is they kind of got used to federal funds that came as part of COVID. And they would contend that we need to increase the per student allotment to be able to help them get out of the hole. And there is a lot of emoting and anger and motivation around that issue too. So you're gonna see a lot of discussion about education throughout the next legislature next year, and it's gonna go on for a long time.
Yeah, it's not easily solved.
It's not, because let me tell you my perspective. So Louisville ISD, which is in my district, if you take that as an example, it is not underfunded. Okay. And what I mean is Louisville ISD sent $36 million in recapture funds, which some people call Robin Hood, to Austin for distribution by the state to other places in the state. So we sent $36 million to Austin, and we're $12 million under budget. It's not very difficult to figure out where the real problem lies, So generally, these school districts have the resource, have the tax base to pay for themselves, but they're all in this system where they're sending out money to Austin that never touches their doorstep at the high school, middle school, elementary school.
Yeah. So is the answer to just pull some of those funds back and let them use their own money?
But that's kind of a philosophical third rail on the left. And so, yeah, I mean, ending recapture would be one way to solve that problem, and it doesn't take that much creativity to do it. I think the view on the left would be, no, you just need to send us more money. We'll take it from here.
Well, and what I would want to know as a taxpayer is, has it worked? Has Robin Hood worked? Like, I don't want a child who is unfortunate and is born in a very poor neighborhood to have a horrible education.
That's right.
So that was the idea, right? Is the more wealthy neighborhoods send money to the poor neighborhood so they can get a better education. Has it worked that way? Look
at HISD in Houston. HISD, for lack of a better word, is in receivership. Basically, the state has assumed control of that school district, and they have a massive tax base. And are they in recapture? Yes, they are. And their school's massively struggling. So is this making Like, who is this for? Who's this intended to
Right.
make their experience better? And is it working? Doesn't appear to be working for anybody very particularly well.
Yeah, so it reminds me of the immigration problem. I mean, it's just a huge problem.
Yeah.
School, immigration, not an easy solution
Not an easy solution.
because it's so complex.
Yeah, and the border is going to continue to be a huge issue in the next legislature. So the thing last year, while President Biden was in charge, we had the border security unit bill come to the floor, which ultimately died. Now, who will be president in 2025?
Right.
We don't know. If it's President Trump, maybe border security as an issue becomes a lot more federally addressed than it is now, and we don't have to commit as many state dollars to the problem. It's very difficult to predict, but it is an ongoing problem. You see not only fentanyl coming across the border, but you're seeing our education systems, our healthcare systems, our criminal justice systems taxed by illegal immigration. And they're under a lot of stress, certainly.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine the worst job would be to work on that border?
It's difficult. It's really, when you talk to Border Patrol agents down there, their morale's pretty low. And the reason is they're not told to stop anybody. They just essentially come across and they process them. They don't actually prevent anybody from coming across in a meaningful way. It's brutal.
Yeah, well, again, like I kind of feel like, oh, I want to help everyone, and if we can help them, how great. But there's a point where we can't help them, and they're not all here to do good. Like in my mind, they're going to come here and be good citizens, but that's not always true, right?
Yeah, every issue requires
Fentanyl.
nuance, right?
Right.
I mean,
That's the problem.
it's not all good or all bad. It's just not, and we have to look at it objectively and go, is this good for our country? Sometimes when I'm out block walking and talking to voters, you run across somebody who served our country as a veteran, as a military veteran. They look at what the federal government is doing for people who are coming here illegally, and they're like, what about me?
Yeah.
It's a very real criticism.
Yeah. Well, the money doesn't grow on the tree.
No.
Right?
No.
And that's what's hard for the legislature to figure out is we can't print the money.
Yeah.
We kind of did during
Federal
COVID,
government did.
right?
Yeah. It grows at the printing press. And, that's one of the reasons we're in the situation that we're in economically, Melinda, is, and, when I talk to people in my district, they're like, why are my property taxes so high? Well, your value went up because of inflation, and now you're paying more in tax. Well, why does it cost so much to go to the grocery store? Inflation. The rent always comes due. There are no free lunches, and I think people in the United States, certainly in Texas, are looking at their wallet and like, man, my dollar doesn't stretch as far anymore. This is directly a result of a policy decision. So we have to be very diligent and careful about how we handle the economy in our state.
So if you win, is that a full-time job? Or?
No, it's not a full-time job. I'm still going to be a trial lawyer just like you. How many cases have you tried in your career?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Innumerable, right? I mean, hundreds, if not thousands. And I still love being a lawyer, Melinda. I've always loved it. From the time I was 8 years old, I told my parents I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to Harvard. And I was able to do both those things by God's grace. And I love being a lawyer. And I think being in the state legislature pays like $600 a month. So nobody's going to get rich. No, nobody's going to get rich off of being in the legislature. But I think it's a great opportunity to serve. There's a big grassroots groundswell movement underfoot in Texas, and it's exciting to be a part of it. It's going to take some shuffling as a family and as a business at the law firm, but I think it's going to be worth it. I think I'm excited about it. It's not quite real to me yet, but it's gonna get here pretty soon.
How do the terms work? How long is a term?
Yeah, 2 years. So you're never not campaigning. I think it's bizarre.
Yes.
When you're in the state legislature, because you have a 2-year term, and the legislature meets every other year. So it'll meet in 2025. It'll be off in 26 and then on in 27. And so if you're not there working, you're campaigning basically. And I don't know. We'll see how that cycle goes. It's
like
it's going to be taxing.
It's a
gonna be
second
taxing.
job in two ways, that you have your legislative duties and the campaign trail.
Yes, ma'am.
I always think that judges, theirs are 4 years typically, depending on the level of judiciary.
Yes.
So luckily it's not constant, but it is kind of a second job because they're there at the courthouse working all day, and then they have to go at night and meet people and shake hands and all of that.
Yeah. What I think can be really taxing is if you're trying to figure out which person you're going to be today. And fortunately, I don't have that problem. I'm a lawyer, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, and that's going to permeate everything that I do as a legislature, politician now. It's what a dirty word that is, politician. You're like, oh, you're a politician now. Like, it's one of the necessary realities of the job.
Yeah, it's kind of like Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
That's what it feels like. When I was in the impeachment trial, I came up to the podium. I was going to take my first witness, and I grabbed the podium with both hands, and I just go, I am not here right now. This is not happening. I just had an out-of-body experience for probably 3 or 4 hours. And I was just like, well, in my mind, I was disassociating. Like I'm back home in Collin County. I'm got a witness on the stand. Meanwhile, there's people all over Texas watching this on television, which I didn't know in the moment. I knew there were TV cameras there, but I didn't know how much this had grasped people to watch the trial. So, definitely a wild experience.
How many representatives do we have?
Oh my
in
gosh.
The House?
Yeah. So I'm embarrassed to tell you, I can't remember the number off the top of my head.
Well, it's a high number and it's not an even number.
How many Psalms are there? 150? I think there's 150.
Oh.
Somebody taught me this trick.
Oh, good.
There's same number of representatives as there are Psalms. So that's 150.
Oh.
Same number of senators as there are Proverbs. And I think that's 31. I think that's right. Yeah.
So explain to people, what is the difference? Like, what does the Senate do versus what the House does?
Yeah, the Senate they've got so there's a much more populous area that the senators represent.
Yes.
So if you think about the Senate districts in Texas, they're going to be much larger geographically and have a much larger population than a House district. So each House district is designed to represent a couple 100,000 people, and each Senate district might be 5 times that.
Yes.
So I'm using rough numbers, but yeah, that kind of gives you a general guideline of the size that you're looking at.
Yes.
And so as a senator, everything scales. So as a senator, you'll probably have 5 times the staff as a House member.
I see.
And when they go somewhere, they're traveling with a phalanx of people, everywhere.
Their entourage.
Oh my gosh, yes, their entourage. Yeah. So House, you might be able to afford 1 or 2 staffers, and senators have to cover a lot larger area, and they've got to have a lot more help.
I've always thought that the House was more the worker bees, usually younger people, and the Senate was, I don't know, they were statesmen or something, a little bit older.
Yeah, there are definitely levels to this thing. So when you're in the House, it's obviously a huge honor, but there are a lot more House members, a lot more personalities and names to keep track of. Senators, it's probably more collegial because there's so many fewer of them.
Yes. Do they tend to stay longer?
The senators, they have a longer cycle. They have a longer cycle, so it's harder to unelect them if you don't like what they're doing. But generally, those districts are rock solid. So if there's a vacancy, those are usually hotly contested races. Like there's one going on in Senate District 30 that was vacated by Drew Springer, the incumbent, and there were 4 people that ran for Senate District 30, and that's in a runoff now. So,
I see.
Very hotly contested.
So you talked about that the person who was the incumbent you did not think was voting consistent with what she said to the voters, when she was trying to get elected. And voting is public record, right?
Yeah, it is. Every vote.
So we could all look up what anybody is voting on.
As long as there is a record vote on the issue on the House floor, which sometimes people like to avoid those if they can, because they don't want people to know how they're voting.
Oh, Oh, there's some trickery.
Yeah, there's a little trickeration from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you think that happens because they're naive when they're on the campaign trail? They're naive to how complex the system is or how it works or what the issues really are? Or do you think they're just saying what they have to say to get elected? And I don't mean her in particular, but when this happens.
I think generally a couple of things can happen, Melinda. Like, one thing is you get to Austin and you join a gang, okay? What I mean is there might be a group of 15 or 20 people that you think are influential, or they have ties to leadership, to the Speaker of the House, and you're like, this is my ticket. This is how I increase my political powers, by voting with them. And when you join the gang, it's blood in, blood out. You either vote with us or you're out of the gang. So sometimes, I'm being facetious, of course, but the representatives sometimes will get co-opted by a group, and they're like, hey, if you want to be with our group, this is what you need to do. And, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours next time. The voters back home don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. We'll make sure that you stay elected. Okay. We got your back. And so the co-option by people who are already in the House is one way that happens. Another way is people try to feather their own nest with lobby dollars, things like that, where they're like, yeah, I wouldn't normally vote for this, but this lobby group gave me $50,000 to campaign. So it's just, there are a number
Corruption, basically.
So there are reasons that people don't follow their principles or values when they get to the legislature. And if that's something that you are susceptible to, they will find it. They'll
Power
ferret
corrupts.
it out.
They say that.
It does. It's one.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Yes, you have heard that. And I think it's one of the reasons term limits are something that we need in government, is because you kind of go native if you stay there for too long.
Mm-hmm.
You become part of the system, and systems have a way of replicating themselves.
So how do you protect against all that yourself?
Yeah, I think you have to guard your innocence, one. You have to make sure that the people who elected you, the grassroots volunteers, stay a part of your life. I hope they'll stay a part of my staff when I'm there, and that those are the people ultimately I want to be accountable to, because those are the people who helped get me elected. I mean, I literally couldn't have done it without them. So if I have to come home and look at one of my volunteers in the face and say, yeah, it was just this one time, I didn't vote your way, but look at all the great things that I got out of it. They're just not going to understand, and they're not going to believe me. And once you have that crisis of confidence of the voters that live in your district, you're on the way out. You can the clock is ticking. And ultimately, I think you just have to live out your principles. And if you feel like you can't live out your principles anymore, you just need to come home. It's time to come home.
Well, what's great is you have a thriving law practice. You do not have to do things to stay elected.
Yeah.
It's not going to be your life's work, right?
Not, in theory, it shouldn't be, But Melinda, I feel like I'm entering this other phase of my life, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate it, because, I spent years 25 to 45 where being a lawyer was a huge part of my identity.
Yes.
And you're still living that with me. I mean, it's just like, have you ever thought about what it would be like if you woke up one day and you could not be a lawyer? You weren't allowed to be.
No.
Like, it's a pretty dark feeling, because this is a huge part of my life. I love being a lawyer. I obviously love being a husband and a dad too, but this is going to continue to be part of my identity. But I picked up this whole new set of friends, experiences, and joys of being in the second phase of my life that are going to have to complement what I've done thus far.
Yes.
So I don't want to stop being a lawyer, but I'm really enjoying doing this too.
It's exciting.
I'm getting a lot of joy out of it, because I'm able to make a difference, and we're pulling some levers that need to be pulled.
That's exciting. Well, I know you're a godly man also, and I think that helps in all things.
Yeah.
excited for the people of Denton. I think you'll do a great job. I think they should vote for you.
Denton County is a great place. Do you practice in Denton County at all?
Yes,
You do? I figured,
yes.
you're probably like me. You're in Dallas, calling
anywhere
Denton,
around
Tarrant.
here.
Anywhere you can get there with your car reasonably fast, you practice there. And Denton County is growing very quickly, and we need to steward that growth really well because there are a lot of people moving here from all over the country. I don't know if you've noticed that. You probably have a lot of your clients who are like, yeah, I moved here from California or Illinois or whatever.
Oh, I drove to Denton Saturday night. My son was in a play there.
Okay.
And the traffic was thick. So
Yeah.
they have moved there, whoever they are.
We need to talk to the county judge about the roads, don't we? Yeah, we need to expand. Yeah, there are infrastructure demands that come along with all these new people. And yeah, it's going to create pressure.
Thank you so much for being here. I wish you great success on the campaign trail.
It's my pleasure. I love you and your practice, and I love what you're doing with your show. Thank you for giving me the privilege of joining you as your guest.
Absolutely. And that's our show today. Thank you for tuning in, and come back again.